Welcome back to Legitimate Targets, everybody. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. We have a very special guest joining us today to talk about all of the big developments surrounding Pakistan as of late. Jabbar is an award-winning Pakistani writer, filmmaker, policy analyst, a former senator and federal minister known for his contributions to media, public policy, and social activism. Mr. Jabbar, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Mr. Hengel. Thank you for your invitation and the introduction. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It's an honor to have you here. I'm curious to start off with, what is the attitude amongst the public in Pakistan towards the recent victory over India? Do people in Pakistan feel as though it's a victory, or is there some skepticism?
Mr. Hengel, thank you, but I'd like to begin by expressing my condolences at the terrible crash that has occurred a short while ago in Ahmedabad in India of an aircraft which was headed for London, and as many as 242 people on board are reported to have perished, 162 of them Indians and the others from Britain and Portugal and other countries. So condolences to the whole set of families that have been affected. We in Pakistan, whether we live in Pakistan or overseas, convey our heartfelt sympathies and prayers to them. Having said that, let me respond to your query, which is, how do the people of Pakistan look at this most recent unfortunate eruption of tension and conflict? We, in a way, are not surprised, because of the unfortunate tendency of the Indian state. And I make the distinction between the Indian state and the people of India, because the Indian state does not necessarily represent the vast majority of the people of India. Because of the electoral system that we use, a party that only secured 38% of the popular vote in the last general election managed to get a plurality of seats. That's because of the first past the post system. So the lesson to derive from that is that 62% of the people of India who voted against the government and the party that is in power. That is why I make the distinction between the Indian state and the people of India. And the people of Pakistan, in some ways, are ironically bemused by the sheer predictability of the Indian state's reaction to that very terrible massacre of 22 people plus in April, because this is a pattern that has been occurring through history. And most recently, there have been incidents in the last few years. But I remember well when I was in the cabinet with General Musharraf in the year 2000, and President Clinton was scheduled to visit Pakistan shortly after his visit to India. On the 20th of March, 35 Sikhs celebrating a holy festival in a certain part of Indian-occupied Kashmir, Chittor Singh Garh in Anantnag district, were massacred, and no trace was found of who perpetrated it. Not a single fugitive was arrested. Several weeks later, Barry Bierak of the New Times published a detailed investigative report saying that the Indian accusation of a Pakistan-based terror outfit is totally unfounded and unsubstantiated. Now, that is the kind of incident which Pakistanis can never forget, being wrongly accused. So in 2025, following similar incidents in the last few years, see this as a pattern to vilify, to demonize, and to defame Pakistan.
So you're saying that most people in Pakistan view this as a false flag that was committed by the Indians, probably.
Absolutely. Because it is, first of all, it is probably the most militarized region in the world. Second, we find it very difficult to visualize how terrorists could penetrate across a heavily militarized line of control, which is verified. I mean, there are three lines on the line of control. There is a central fence, and then there are two fences on either side of that central line, which are electronic. I mean, which can alert, which can sense movement close to it. Over 700 kilometers have been installed, and how they can penetrate across this. We've tried to find the answer by saying, let United Nations Military Observers Group, which was originally posted there to monitor what was happening, until India expelled the UN Military Observers Group back in 1972-73. And since then, it is Pakistan which allows the United Nations Military Observers Group to go right up to the line of control and see what is happening. Now, whereas in India, do not want any independent verification, which is what happened immediately after this incident. Pakistan immediately said, let us invite an impartial, investigative third-party forum and let them assess, is there evidence for involvement of Pakistanis. So I find it difficult, most Pakistanis find it difficult. How can you, first of all, transcend the line of heavily militarized, then go about 150 kilometers to 200 kilometers inside Indian-occupied Kashmir, past multiple checkpoints, and commit the massacre, retreat, and then disappear completely? It's inexplicable. So that is why we think this is a false flag operation.
Now, obviously, there was great military victory in Pakistan throughout the battle, the skirmishes. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, claims that he was the one that settled the peace. How true is that claim from President Trump that he was the one that negotiated the peace here?
Thank you. I do not have first-hand knowledge about the timing and the date on which President Trump intervened personally. But judging by the statements of the Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, judging by the statements made by the government of Pakistan, and looking at the particular timing, I can only deduce that President Trump exerted influence either directly or indirectly by persuading the Indian government through the Secretary of State to take his cautionary advice very seriously, that the levels of escalation were coming to a point where Pakistan could not be held responsible for what may happen next. So I think I would tend to accept President Trump's statement and claim, because without that, India would not have de-escalated or frozen the condition it did.
And given that there's this peace right now, it's very good. You know, there's not people that are dying each and every day and night. But what is the state of India's water aggression against Pakistan today, despite this ceasefire?
As you are aware, all international law by history, by written conventions such as the Vienna Treaty, specifically prohibit the use of water as a weapon. Under no condition is the use of water allowed, period, full stop. And yet India has been so blatant and crude in its disregard for all of international history and for the written word. It says that it holds the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance. And there is no provision for holding the treaty in abeyance. So that's yet another violation. As to the water flow, the key factor is withholding correct information from Pakistan about the timing, about the volume of the water, about the schedule at which the water will be released in order to flow into Pakistan. In practical terms, India has no choice but to permit the water to flow because it simply does not have the storage capacity to divert for its own use. So this is a threat and deliberately meant to create conditions of uncertainty, unpredictability, adversely affect agriculture as normal water supply to urban areas. And to some extent, this has caused concern to us, but water continues to flow. Overall, as you are aware, Pakistan and India are amongst the countries most affected by climate change. So a premature, liquidization of the glaciers of the upper mountains and the water flows down has already caused untimely flooding, rains, and periodic drought. So weather uncertainty and its adverse effects are already part of the landscape of South Asia, and Pakistan particularly so, because of the peculiar nature of our terrain and location. So certainly the use of water potentially represents a fundamental existential threat to the state of Pakistan, which is utterly unacceptable. In Pakistan, will condition accept an existential threat which tries to undermine the very existence of the structure of Pakistan. And as to the claim sometimes India makes, these are rivers, our rivers. Rivers do not belong to nations. Rivers are planetary resources which belong to all of humanity. Yes, certainly, territorial sovereignty does affect how rivers are used, but that use by individual nation states is governed by international law and tradition and norm of minimal humanity. So, if you start applying this business of our rivers, then states in India, northern states or the central states can say, we did water to Karnataka or Tamil Nadu or Kerala, which are Indian states to the south of the central states. And I mean, it would be laughable if within a country, provinces started saying these are our water, not your waters. There's no aspect of yours and mine. Water is universal. It is no one's exclusive property. So we will challenge it. We have already challenged, and I think the whole force of global opinion will not accept India's actual use of water as a weapon.
One thing that surprised me after the ceasefire was announced was Prime Minister Modi gave a speech, and in effect he said, Operation Sindoor is not over yet. Are there any worries in Pakistan as to what that could mean? What future, actions India might take in the continuation of Operation Sindoor, or do you think it really is over?
No, it is not over, but it will be operating at a level lower than visible, explicit involvement of the Indian military in operations against Pakistan. When he says Operation Sindoor will continue, he means two things. One, the threat to resume military action, just as a threat, because he knows that if he takes it beyond the threat stage to actual deployment of troops or the use of air weapons or the use of the navy, there will be retaliation. So there is a second level of the continuation of Operation Sindoor, which is covert level. which has been happening before Operation Sindoor in Balochistan and in KP and in other parts of Pakistan, and now promises to be intensified and enhanced. So the level of Operation Sindoor will continue, along with the suspension of any trade or travel or the issuance of visas. That too could be considered part of Operation Sindoor.
At this point, do you think that India has ever been more isolated geopolitically on the stage than they are today? I mean, you had these diplomats from India traveling around the world after the ceasefire and trying to make their case for Operation Sindoor's just nature. And they seem to be rebuked in many of the countries they visited, like in Colombia, for example. Also in Russia, we saw the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov, invite Mushahid Hussein to a Eurasian summit where there was 12 BJP members in attendance. And at that summit, Foreign Minister Lavrov condemned India's participation in Quad Indo-Pacific aggression. And it was kind of a watershed moment. It seems like countries are no longer viewing Pakistan through India's eyes, but instead looking at this situation with a very sober lens.
Thank you. I great appreciation for the diplomatically appropriate and astute observations made by Foreign Minister Lavrov, particularly on this issue, because historically there is supposed to be a very close alignment between Russia and India, militarily and economically and geostrategically. And while respecting the historical relationship, it is most commendable of Foreign Minister Lavrov to have spoken as he did, to simply stress the need for a balance, for restraint, and for dialogue, and for the resolution through peaceful means rather than unilaterally holding Pakistan responsible. You don't have to say it, and particularly foreign ministers have to choose their words with care, and you cannot imperil a multi-dimensional relationship which Russia has with India. And that is fine by me as a Pakistani. I have no reservations on it. But Minister Lavrov, I think, spoke very aptly and at the right time. And I think that has sent a signal to India, which otherwise considers Russia to be an absolutely predictable ally. Well, I think Russia has asserted the fact that Russia is capable of remaining an ally, and yet in the larger interest of world stability, regional peace, it is capable of advising both parties, Pakistan and India, to exercise moderation and balance. I think Russia has stressed what Pakistan has been stressing, the need for independent analysis and evaluation of the situation, and the use of all possible multilateral and bilateral forums to conduct dialogue. Because dialogue is the key. If you look at history, when the North Vietnamese and the Americans were in terrible violent conflict in the early 70s, Henry Kissinger and the foreign minister of the North Vietnamese Communist government met on a series of meetings to conduct dialogue and to explore how, under those warlike conditions, the two countries could move towards peace. So in this situation, where there is no outright war between Pakistan and India, there is even more need for dialogue. I mean, dialogue is the very basis throughout history for the resolution of conflict. And it is Pakistan that has consistently offered dialogue. And not just dialogue. I must say to the merit, to the commendable point made by former Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, who has recently led a group of eminent Pakistanis on a visit to the United States. He has proposed on behalf of the government of Pakistan a joint investigative permanent mechanism between India and Pakistan so that the intelligence can be shared between the two forums of IS and RAW, for example, and they can remain updated on what the facts on the ground are. On the purely military side, there already exists such a mechanism. For example, the Directors General of Military Operations, both of Pakistan and India, have a long-standing agreement to periodically exchange phone calls and alert each other to any possible sources of tension or misrepresentation. A similar arrangement on the intelligence level would go a great distance in removing preconceptions and prejudices about what are the actual factors responsible for a particular incident.
You know, at a time like this, when I think Pakistan has really showed the world its strength, but also ability to resolve these issues diplomatically. That, of course, was the main goal from the start. And India has suffered such a great humiliation. It seems to me as though this is an excellent opportunity for Pakistan to be welcomed into BRICS. Do you think that there is possibly an increased likelihood that Pakistan might be invited to join BRICS as, say, a partner country in the near future, following the events that have taken place over the past few months?
That would be a very welcome step, and I think the presence of Russia there and the other countries would hopefully support that idea. There is obviously going to be a predictable opposition or negativism from the Indian side to Pakistan's admission, but that does not devalue the legitimacy and the validity of admitting Pakistan. And I just want to make the point that at the same time, Pakistan should not be unduly concerned about being admitted there or being admitted here. Pakistan's reality is not contingent upon who recognizes that reality or does not recognize that reality. The reality of China after the Communist Party took power in 1949 did not change only because Taiwan remained a member of the United Nations in the name of China right up to 1971 to 72. So it took the formal structure of the United Nations over 20 years to recognize the reality of China. And then China became the member of the United Nations. So even if BRIC, God forbid, does not admit Pakistan, the fact is we are 250 million people. And by the grace of God, we are so good at making babies that our population is scheduled to reach 300 million over the next 20-25 years. You cannot disregard 300 million people growing at that rate, which is also geostrategically extremely relevant to the whole structure of global peace. It's not just regional peace. We are looking at Iran, we are looking at the Gulf, we are looking at China, we are looking at CPEC, and we are looking at Russia. So Pakistan's importance, relevance, let us say, importance is a very egoistic word. Pakistan's relevance is not diminished by BRIC delaying admission of Pakistan to BRIC. its own relatives will continue.
Mm-hmm. I have one final question for you. I think a lot of people assumed that by February there would be there would be heightened levels of pressure on Pakistan by the United States, by Rick Grinnell, to free Imran Khan. Are you surprised that there hasn't been that sort of pressure? And while I personally, I'll say this, because I've never really said my 2 cents about Imran Khan on this show. I personally think it's a tragedy that he's in prison and the conditions he's being held in are not good. They're very tragic. It's also worth noting that, there were a lot of these nefarious USAID, George Soros funded operations were operating within Pakistan under Imran Khan, and then under the new military leadership, they have all been forced out. So, interesting development, but I still don't think he should be in prison. What do you think of the situation?
Yeah. I would prefer, as a Pakistani, that the decision to allow Imran Khan his due right to freedom of movement, freedom of speech, should be recognized by the judiciary of Pakistan. It should not be dependent on the intervention of a third party, or shall I say a second party other than the state of Pakistan. The state of Pakistan itself should be responsible for that, and the judiciary of Pakistan, especially the superior judiciary, which in the past has held a mixed record. For example, it enabled the execution, the unjust assassination of Bhutto in 1979, because the judiciary gave a very, very slanted verdict, which fortunately it has recognized very belatedly earlier this year as having been a more unjust verdict. On the positive side, the Supreme Court of Pakistan has never permitted the execution of any person convicted for blasphemy of the Holy Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, even by high courts. The Supreme Court has always overturned the death penalty and has either allowed the falsely accused person to leave Pakistan or to be freed. So the Supreme Court has a duty to take notice of the bail applications that have been submitted by Imran Khan, and looking at their merit, it has the moral, it has the ethical, and it has the legal authority to consider bail on its own merits and to dispense with cases. So I would not want the EU to exert pressure, and it is most appropriate for Pakistan's own institutions to be fair, to be open and transparent, and determine the merits of a person's freedom.
Well, I think that's a beautiful note to wrap up on. I agree with you there. Mr. Jabbar, thank you so much for joining me today. Is there anywhere you'd like to shout out for people to follow along with your work moving forward?
Sorry, could you just repeat that last part of your comment, your question?
Would you like to shout out any website or social media so people can follow along with your work?
Well, I would only say the less of social media, the better. Nothing like mainstream media, but with some exceptions. Always watch Jackson Hingle on social media, and if possible on mainstream media. But remember that reality in media is only a fraction of the totality of reality. Reality is far larger, multidimensional than media reality. While media reality is very pertinent, very informative, useful, indispensable, it is not all of reality. So all you have to do is, if you have never visited Pakistan, every foreigner comes to Pakistan for the first time says, my God, Pakistan is so different from the way I thought Pakistan was going to be. I thought Pakistan is full of terrorists and violence and dressed in burqas. My God, they realize what Pakistanis are. They're friendly, they're outgoing, they're hospitable, they're generous, and above all, there are very assertive women. With my wife, for example, or women throughout the country, you will find them very assertive, increasingly so, articulate, educated, fighter pilots in the sky, bankers on the ground, teachers, doctors, all kinds of professions they're advancing. So visit Pakistan. We have some of the most beautiful tourist delights waiting for you. Meet the people of Pakistan. And Jackson Hingle, we special welcome for you and your colleagues, Ekterina included.
Thank you so much. I definitely plan on this year, so I will see you there very soon. And thank you for joining me today.
Look forward to that. Thank you.